What's going on, guys? Welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. and Matthews, break down all the original content they watch on the WWE Network. And today we're talking the latest episode of WWE Untold, entitled Goldberg's Streak, that went up this past Sunday on the WWE Network. I should probably mention first and foremost, I had an exclusive interview with Goldberg talking about this very special on the WWE Network. We spoke last Tuesday or Wednesday, I believe. I think it was on Wednesday. The interview went up on Friday in both Bleacher Report in article form and in audio form right here on the channel. So if you haven't already checked it out, definitely do so. We talk all about this Untold, his streak, returning to WWE, potential opponents he wants to face, the obvious Roman Reigns question, how much more he has left in the tank, and so much more. It was a really, really fun interview. And I actually had the chance to talk to Goldberg about almost exactly 5 years ago. And I was so incredibly intimidated just because that was when, before he came back to WWE, he wasn't doing a lot of wrestling interviews. He was in a movie at that point, filming a movie. So I really felt uncomfortable asking him a lot of wrestling-related questions, but that's all this interview was this time around. So it was really cool, and I think I was the only publication for Bleacher Report. I think we were the only website that got an interview with Goldberg before the special dropped on Sunday, which is really fucking cool. So if you want to hear much more from Goldberg himself about the streak and so much more, definitely check out the article version of that interview. I'll probably drop it in the description box down below. You can check that out. Or if you go to the interview itself right here on the channel, the link to the article is right there in that as well. So be sure to check out the audio of that interview right here on the channel in the interviews playlist. And that was from last Friday. And we speak again all about WCW, WWE, and so much more. So this was a great documentary. I thought this was really, really cool. It ended up being around 50 minutes. These Untolds are some of the best pieces of content they do on the network. And they've done a bunch of them over the years on the Mick Foley, Undertaker, Hell in a Cell match, Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle from WrestleMania 21, the Randy Orton and Undertaker one that they just did a couple of weeks ago from Armageddon 2005, really encompassing their entire feud, but culminating inside Hell in a Cell at Armageddon 2005, 15 years ago. That was a great one. The Sasha Banks and Bayley one from TakeOver Brooklyn 1 from 5 years ago. That was great. They've done a lot of these. They've done a lot of these different documentaries. Sting's first WWE debut match, his debut 6 years ago, up until his final match 5 years ago. Again, really, really good stuff. And I thought this was equally entertaining for different reasons. But yeah, so he starts off the documentary talking about how he was born to be a football player, and how his father played football, his brothers played football. I did not know that. I knew, obviously, he was very much involved in football. He was in the NFL. I didn't know that he actually, that the football thing kind of ran in the family. I didn't know that his father used to be a player, that his brother used to be a player. I thought that was pretty cool. He talked about getting injured during a fourth preseason game while on the Falcons. His abdomen was ripped right off of his pelvis, and that was it. And that was always his dream, was to be involved in football, was to be a football player. And that dream fell short. He fell short of accomplishing that goal because of an injury, something that was beyond his control. Worse yet, he had no plan B. And he had no desire to do anything else but just lift weights. So he was working at the Main Event Fitness gym throughout his entire time. I don't know if it was while he was in the NFL, but probably after he got done with football, he was working at Main Event Fitness. And it was while he was there that he ran into Buff Bagwell, Sting, Lex Luger, and actually all three of them were making fun of him one day while he was working out. And he went off on him, and they were like, hey, I think this guy has something, which is kind of interesting. But it was actually DDP and Eric Bischoff who met Goldberg at what DDP calls a gentleman's club, which I thought was funny. DDP saw Bill Goldberg, and he goes, this guy's money. Now, I don't know if that relates to the Bagwell, Sting, and Luger stuff. I'm not exactly sure if they got him in the door. It sounds like it was DDP and Bischoff. DDP saw Goldberg. They were talking at this gentleman's club, and DDP said, because he lives in Atlanta, Georgia, does Goldberg, and that's where WCW was based out of for a long time, so it made sense. So DDP saw Bill, and he goes, this guy's money. And Goldberg knew that he had to call Bischoff, and he did. Talked to Bischoff about working for WCW. And he told him, hey, I'm not going to be one of those guys if you bring me in just to be thrown around and just get the crap kicked out of me. I want to be in there to make a difference, which is obviously pretty bold, come from someone that has zero prior wrestling experience, had never been involved in wrestling prior to this point. It was a pretty ballsy thing to say and pretty cocky, but, he didn't want to be a job guy. He wanted to be someone that was going to make a difference, and he definitely was with the way that, not really he wrestled, but his presence and aura, that was not someone that was going to be brought in just to lose to various other people, you know. It was someone that had to be a star in some form or fashion. And Bischoff knew as soon as he brought him in that there was a charisma there. Now, we don't see Bischoff on this documentary. I assume these are all new comments, but we do hear from Bischoff, so maybe he called in. I don't know. He just didn't want to be shown for the documentary. I'm not really sure, but they might have been old comments. But I feel like if they were old comments, then they would have shown the footage, because the Hulk Hogan comments were not new comments. He made those back in 2014, and it said as so in the documentary. So, again, if it was, it's old footage, then why, I don't know, unless it was from like 2002, 2003, I'm not sure. Nonetheless, though, DDP was very confused when Goldberg came in and shaved his head, because he had these like long, luscious locks, and that was part of the reason why DDP saw a star in him, was because of how he looked, and he shaved his head. And he goes, dude, what are you doing? We already have another bald guy in wrestling right now killing it, like this bald badass over in WWE named Stone Cold Steve Austin. Not really sure if you heard of him. And Goldberg goes, listen, dude, this is just who I am. This is who I am. I just got to be me. And it worked. So he recalls training under Sarge at the power plant. I've heard a lot of stories about Sarge. You know, Batista, I think, actually trained with him as well a couple of years later before WCW closed down in the early 2000s. But he said Sarge was very instrumental in his career and helped him form that Bill Goldberg character. The Assassin, I guess he ran the power plant, the original person who played the Assassin wrestling character. He ran the power plant, and he asked Goldberg what's his finisher. So Goldberg had no idea. But he did a spear to Manny Fernandez while at the power plant one day, and they were like, yeah, do that. So we knew what his setup move was, and he played football, so it made sense, and it's one of the best spears you'll see anywhere. And a lot of people do the spear, whether it be Edge, Christian did it because of Edge, Roman Reigns does it. Roman Reigns is a great fucking spear. I think Goldberg takes the cake, personally. Just because he does it so well, and it looks so devastating when he's done it, and he's done so many amazing ones, that it's really hard to argue against Bill Goldberg having the best spear. So he knew what his setup was, his setup move, and DDP even said that, some people were doing the spear at the time, but no one really popularized it the same way that Goldberg did in the late 90s. So he started doing the jackhammer to everyone at the power plant, and that's when he knew that's what his finisher would be. So soon after that, Bischoff says that he came along at the absolute perfect time. With the fans wanting a new fresh babyface on top and the way that the fans were reacting, Goldberg was just a product of the times, and it worked perfectly. And Nash called it like the 1969 Mets, where it was the one year where the Mets were better than the Yankees. That was the one year back in 98 that WCW was better than WWE. So Goldberg debuts on the September 22nd, 1997 episode of Monday Nitro, beating Hugh Morris. And now we had no vignettes. And Mike Tenay, who was one of the commentators at the time, he knew everything about everyone. But the thing with Mike Tenay was that he knew nothing about Goldberg, so it made him very mysterious, very enigmatic, very interesting, very intriguing, So Goldberg wanted to go out there and prove that he was very athletic. And he did just that in his very first match. He did a fucking backflip. And for a dude his size, that's very impressive. And he also picked up Hugh Morris at 300 pounds. That's how heavy he was at that point, was Morris. So it was super impressive when he hit him with the spear and then also kicked out of his finish, in addition to hitting him with the jackhammer and putting him away. Very, very impressive. So he was interviewed afterward, I think by Mean Gene, and he cut off the interviewer. He cut off Mean Gene. He said nothing. He cut off the post-match interview. And Goldberg says that it was that moment that really set the stage for his career. So he faced the Barbarian the next week, beat him. And Bischoff also talked about, like I alluded to earlier, how hard it was to win over the fans. And he managed to do just that, especially nowadays. And Goldberg actually talked to me about that in an interview, how disrespectful fans are nowadays and stuff like that. But it can be very difficult to win over the fans with what you're doing. And he was able to do, again, just that with what he was doing back in 98 in WCW. Just going in there, squashing fools, and leaving. And obviously it was nothing new by that point. But it was a relatively, I don't want to say relatively new concept, but it was popularized by Bill Goldberg because it was so different than anything else going on in wrestling at that point that it just fucking worked for him. And DDP talks about his intensity and how great that was. Mike Tenay even started playing up Goldberg's record. And Mike Tenay being the professor, everyone really listened to what Tenay had to say. They believed what he had to say because the guy had so much credibility as a commentator that when he started playing up Goldberg's record, it meant something. So Goldberg's undefeated record really took on a life of its own from that point forward. And it added not only to the credibility of the streak, but the credibility of Goldberg that he was going in there and squashing all these guys. You know what I mean? So DDP was watching Goldberg's rise, and he told Bischoff, he went over to his shoulders, put his arms on his shoulders, and said, "Do not mess this up." Kevin Nash is on this documentary too, and these are new comments. He talked about the inflation of the record, and they had Matt Camp on here too, who's on the WWE Bump Show, on the WWE's The Bump. And Matt Camp said, "Hey, I don't know if winning 8 matches in a week over the course of a weekend is believable, but we bought it as fans, and it didn't matter what the number was. The guy was going in there and killing fucking fools, and I completely agree. Was the record inflated? Absolutely. To go in there and win, to have the record inflated 8 times, like for it to go from, for example, 50 to 58 from one Monday to the next makes absolutely no sense. Or even from one Friday to a Monday, that makes absolutely no sense." And people questioned that, and Kevin Nash said it was stupid. Like, he went in there and beat Hugh Morris 30 times, he said. Like, how impressive really... He didn't say, like, how impressive really is it, but he wanted to point out, like, you know, a lot of those people that he beat were the same people multiple times, and a lot of those people were fucking job guys. So, again, you got to take that with a grain of salt. But at the same time, it was impressive. To go undefeated for any stretch of time, but specifically a year, is very, very impressive. So Goldberg emphasized the importance of being able to do your finisher to anyone. And that's a big thing, not just with Goldberg, but anyone. I've heard several people talk about how you need to be able to hit your finisher on anyone. Like, can you do this finisher on the Big Show? If the answer is no, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Goldberg is so strong that, yeah, the jackhammer, you can't, I mean, depending on who you are, you probably can't do it to everyone, but Goldberg's a fucking freak. He's a freak in nature. He's extremely athletic. You know, he could do it on everyone. He did it on the fucking Big Show multiple times. He did it on Hogan. He did it on multiple people several times. He, you know, even recently, he's done it to The Fiend. He's done it to, not Braun, did he do it to Braun? I don't think he did. He probably hit Braun with a bunch of spears, though. But at any rate, he was able to do that finisher to everyone, so it worked. So, as he mentioned in our interview, that the streak really took it to the next level. They took that streak to the next level when he beat Raven for the United States Heavyweight Championship back in April of '98 on Nitro. But during that entire time, he didn't feel accepted. There was never at any one point during his WCW tenure that he felt accepted by the locker room, which is logical considering that he was this hot new guy at the time. The rest of the locker room is probably thinking, hey, this guy's taking our spot. Why is he getting the push? He's only been here for a cup of coffee. I completely get it. It sucks, but I understand it. It's not really much of a surprise when I heard that. WCW at that point, Matt Camp brought up as from the fans' perspective he was speaking from. WCW was missing that top-tier babyface. Hogan was a heel. They had the NWO. They had DDP, who wasn't quite there yet, but he was also rising up, but he wasn't quite there. Who else did they have? Sting? Was he a heel? I don't remember. I'm not really sure what he was doing at that time. He obviously had the Starrcade moment in late 97, but by 98, what he was doing, I don't remember. But they needed that number one babyface. And Goldberg was about to be that guy. Hogan was the guy at that time. And they knew that Goldberg's hometown was coming up on Nitro. They were going to be in Goldberg's hometown for that Nitro on July 6, 1998. So Hogan told Bischoff, hey, listen, we need the next Hogan. We need the next man. I'm not sure how much of this is actually accurate because, again, this is Hulk Hogan we're talking about here. But he said, hey, why don't we do the title change in Goldberg's hometown on Nitro? And obviously not doing it on pay-per-view was a mistake, but at the same time, they're in his hometown. It's going to be a big fucking moment. The crowd's going to go nuts. Why not? So they named the new number one contender on an episode of Nitro. They said, hey, the next in line for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship is going to be Bill Goldberg. And Goldberg said he actually found out while watching the show from like his house or something. He's like, oh shit, we're doing this. We're going ahead with this. We're getting the title opportunity in my hometown of Nitro, which is pretty crazy. So they talked about the crazy buzz around Atlanta that day and how everyone was behind Bill Goldberg. And how being there to win the title that night meant a lot to Goldberg. To win the championship meant something, but to be in his hometown, to be accepted by his hometown fans, meant that much more. And he actually had to wrestle Scott Hall at the beginning of the show, I think, to defend his U.S. championship before going on to win the world title later on in the night. And he said they actually messed up the match. I don't know if he was knocked out or what the hell happened, but it was a very stressful day. But at the same time, it was a culmination of everything he had worked his entire life for up to that point. He trusted Hogan as a businessman, but at the same time, he realizes when a rib is a rib. And during the match, Hogan got him in his armpit, and Hogan had fucking icy hot in his armpit. So Goldberg said he could not see for the rest of the match. And he was very understanding of it now. He was like, yeah, you could say otherwise. Like, oh, you're an old guy, so I get why you would have it. But you definitely did that as a rib. Let's not fucking, beat around the bush here. Hogan doesn't comment on it. They don't get Hogan's confirmation in that story. Because, again, Goldberg's comments are from recently. Hogan's comments are from 2014. So that's probably why. But he doesn't really care about that now. So he won the World Championship that night. Crowd went fucking nuts. He went 108-0 with that win. And the coolest part of the night for him was not winning the World Championship, but was what happened afterward. What happened after the show went off the air. The NWO came out. They attacked Goldberg after he won the championship, and Goldberg was saved by the Falcons, his teammates from his old football team, the Atlanta Falcons. And that meant the entire world to Goldberg. That was probably the most emotional he gets in this entire episode, was talking about that one moment. And he found out that it turned out that his dream, as opposed to becoming a football player, and that was his dream, but his new dream ended up being just as cool, was winning the World Championship and celebrating that win with his teammates. And he said in that moment, he always wanted to be an Atlanta Falcon. In that moment, they wanted to be him. And he said, I can never replicate that feeling again. So from that point afterward, he became a pop culture icon. They said he was on credit cards, he was in commercials, he was doing TV shoots, all this other shit. He was all over the place doing NASCAR stuff. He popped up everywhere. And all Goldberg wanted to do was make people smile. So he also really wanted to take that character seriously, and he gets called a mark for himself, but he really wanted to take the character seriously for stuff like that. So he beat Canyon to go 145-0. And in that period, during the time that he was world champion, DDP rose up to his level. And I was really happy they talked about this. They actually had a match at Halloween Havoc 1998 that I hate to say I only saw for the first time recently, but I did. I only watched it for the first time a couple of months ago before Halloween Havoc this year. But they had a match in 98's Halloween Havoc for the WCW World title. And it's one of Goldberg's favorite matches. It's one of DDP's favorite. Actually, it's one of DDP's favorite matches. And for Goldberg, it's Goldberg's best match, he said. It was the best match that he ever had. And he praises DDP for being as good as he is. And it was an honor for Goldberg, he said, to be in the main event with a guy like that. In the main event of a WCW pay-per-view. He actually hurt his shoulder on the ring post while going to spear DDP. DDP moved, hit his shoulder on the ring post. Goldberg was fucking all over the place here. He actually spiked his head doing the spear to DDP. His head hit the mat before DDP's body did. And in doing so, he knocked himself out. And when he tried to go for the the jackhammer, I blanked there for a second. When he was going for the jackhammer, he couldn't get DDP up. And it looks like it was a work. It looks like it was part of the match. DDP didn't know it was a shoot. He didn't know that Goldberg legitimately could not get him up because he was knocked out. He had no idea at that point. So Goldberg tried to get him up, and then DDP reversed into the diamond cutter. He didn't say that was a work or a shoot. I assume that was part of the match because I'm not really sure how you make that up on the fly. That was a beautiful fucking counter. But I think the fact that he couldn't get him up originally was part of, not part of the match, rather. That was completely real. The diamond cutter was probably planned, and the pop was in-fucking-sane. The pop was massive. The crowd just went nuts. Goldberg hits the jackhammer, one of the loudest pops that DDP ever heard. And as loud as the pop is on TV when you watch it, it was that much louder, like 10 times louder, in the arena itself. So Goldberg said that he woke up while doing the jackhammer to DDP, won the match, went 155-0 with the win. And Goldberg believes, as I said earlier, that was his best match. That was the best match that he ever had. And I would put it up there with the Brock match from WrestleMania, not 20 obviously, but WrestleMania 33. I don't know if that was his best match, but it was definitely one of his best matches. I don't know if it was better than this one, but it's definitely up there in my opinion. So he attributes that entirely to DDP, that match was as good as it was. And Goldberg felt from that point afterward that fans wanted to see something new from him, that he couldn't always go in there and just squash people in like a minute or two. He had to evolve in the ring. So Nash went into Starrcade 98 feeling that like that match with Goldberg for the championship in the main event of that show, I think it was the main event, was a prize fight. It felt like a prize fight. It had a big fight feel. Kevin Nash, I'm not sure how much momentum he had at that point, but I guess he had a lot. They were doing the match in the main event of the show. So Nash recalls a moment in the match where Goldberg broke out of Nash's armbar, and I guess that was a shoot, where Nash locked in an armbar on Goldberg, and Goldberg immediately took his arm away, because Goldberg didn't want to be made to look vulnerable. And he's like, dude, you got to take my fucking shit at some point. And then he craps all over the finish. Goldberg's craps all over the finish. They both thought it was shit. Where Disco Inferno runs out. I mean, a lot of people forget about this part, but Disco Inferno runs out, okay? He wasn't a member of the Wolfpack at that point, so there was literally zero reason for him to be out there. Bam Bam Bigelow interfered. Like, fucking everyone's coming out here. And Kevin Nash even said, what is the clown car next? Like, who else is going to come out here and interfere in this match? The cattle prod that ended up beating Goldberg after Scott Hall tased him with it was not the first idea. The first idea was to get a policeman taser. And that's what Goldberg wanted to happen. I mean, the taser alone was fucking dumb, but it ended up being a cattle prod. The prod, I guess, was safer than a policeman taser, even though the prod was used to put down animals. So I don't really know. DDP was shitting all over it. Everyone shat all over it. It was fucking dumb. So Nash ended up winning. He ended the streak at 173-1, winning the world title in the process. And Goldberg said, hey, listen, I didn't argue with the finish. I didn't get paid to be a booker. And I didn't really know how dumb it was of a thing to do at that point until much later on. But he went out there and fulfilled their request. And he said it was my birthday that day. And Nash, I did not know this, so it was Goldberg's birthday, not a great way to spend a birthday. But I guess Goldberg either brought that up to Nash either beforehand or afterward. And he said that to Nash, and I guess Nash told him, listen, today's like the 2-year, I guess his mother actually passed away on that day in 1994. Nash said, listen, my mom, today is the anniversary of my mom's death. I think I got you beat. I think my top's yours. And then he just walked away. Jesus Christ. So Goldberg said that the booking committee brought the idea of the finish to that match to Kevin Nash. And Kevin Nash goes, I don't know what Goldberg wants to believe, but it was not booking at that time. He blames Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan. They probably came up with the idea, he said. He had nothing to do with it. Goldberg at that point didn't know what was next. He didn't know whether it was time or not to break the streak, but what he did know was that he had to move forward. And Matt Camp called it an era, he called that era with Goldberg lightning in a bottle. And how it really gave Goldberg that whole streak and the aura surrounding it. Goldberg says this himself, that really gave him the ability to feel larger than life for the kids. And it was the coolest thing he could have ever experienced working with kids and Make-A-Wish and stuff like that. DDP said that Goldberg was very reality-based, one of the most reality-based characters you will ever see. And DDP was very proud of him for still being able to do what he can do, like be the Goldberg of old, 20 years later, come back, beat Brock Lesnar, win the World Championship multiple times. He's very proud of him for that, which I thought was really cool to hear from DDP. And to close it out, Goldberg says that he's a very complex individual, and at the end of the day, he just wants to treat people how he wants to be treated. He treats people how he would like to be treated, and how he just wants to set a good example for everyone who comes after him. And I thought that was a great note to end on, a very positive note. So, they obviously don't get into Goldberg's WWE run, nor should they, nor did they need to. This was all about the streak. And if you don't know a lot about the streak, it's definitely a must-watch. Even if you do, it's a must-watch. I thought this was a great piece of business. Fantastic documentary here. I had high hopes for it. I've been looking forward to it all week. But it ended up being just as good, if not better, than I was hoping for. Again, nothing new. They don't really settle the score on who was booking at the time. Goldberg says that Nash was, and Nash said that he wasn't, so it's more of a he said, she said type of thing, or he said type of situation. I wish they went into more detail about that. I'm pretty sure Kevin Nash was booking at that point, but I could be wrong. I didn't really do the research to look that up, nor is that really important. But the documentary itself was great. You could do additional research if you would like. I would actually implore that you do, like I probably should. But I thought this was great. They got a lot of talking heads here. Eric Bischoff we didn't see, but we heard from him. He was crucial to the documentary here. We heard from Hogan, even though the comments were like from 6 years ago, but that was nice. We hear from Bill Goldberg himself, obviously. We hear from Matt Camp as a fan, from the fan perspective, giving his fan perspective and whatnot, as well as Kevin Nash, which was a completely new interview. So I thought this was really, really, really well done. And you should definitely check it out right now on WWE Network. It's WWE Untold, Goldberg Streak. Be sure to like the video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more daily content. Hit the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up, as well as check out my exclusive interview with Goldberg talking about this very documentary and so much more right now on Bleacher Report and right here on the channel from the interviews playlist that went up 5 days ago on Friday. So be sure to check that out. It was a really, really, really cool interview. So it's about 20 minutes in length as well, so we covered a lot of ground in 20 minutes. So check out that interview right now. It was a lot of fun to do. And be sure to subscribe for more exclusive interviews. In 2020 alone, we've been able to talk to Sasha Banks. And I've been able to talk to a lot of people, but these interviews are up right now here on the channel. you can check out right now here on the channel my interviews with Goldberg, Sasha Banks, Bianca Belair, Paul Heyman, Triple H, Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, Jeff Hardy, and the list goes on and on and on. Johnny Gargano, Danny Burch, Cameron Grimes. There's a lot of cool ones up here on the channel. You're going to want to check them out right here on the YouTube channel. So again, subscribe if you haven't already. There's new content literally every single day. I've uploaded a new video every day in the year of 2020. So if you're subscribing, you're not going to miss out on anything. So you're getting your, I was going to say you're getting your bang for your buck, but you're not paying for anything. So it's completely free content every single day. Just subscribe. That's all it takes. Just hit that little subscribe button and the bell button to be notified every time a new video goes up. At any rate, folks, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.